Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com. Everyone, welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Samaniego here, along with Adam Lemrys, Ben Schneider, and Kobe Lampis from the Podium Finish. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network as well through the link for Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. We got a lot of racing to cover, so let's get straight into it. NTT IndyCars, Music City Grand Prix.
Another year. Another crazy big Music City Grand Prix in Nashville. 26 cars, only 11 of them finished on the lead lap in a caution-filled race of attrition. Early in the race, Pato O'Ward got in the back of Will Power, then Graham Rahal got into O'Ward's rear in the chain reaction, a part of the crash. Scott Dixon got rear-ended by Dalton Kellett, but the six-time IndyCar champion would not be denied, as he barely held off a hard charge on Scott McLaughlin at the end to win the race. At one moment, it seemed like Dixon would be a long shot for the championship while everybody focused on Power versus Ericsson. But Power, he finished 11 and Ericsson 14. A long day for them. Now, in typical Scott Dixon fashion, he's knocking on the door, taking the championship points lead and possibly winning a 7th IndyCar championship. Power's been mostly consistent all year. He still has a 6-point lead in the championship over Dixon, so certainly got a little bit smaller. Dixon moves into second place as he seems to be getting hot at the right time. Then third, Marcus Ericsson, 12 points back. Newgarden, 22 behind. And Alex Palou, 33 points back. It's Scott Dixon, the championship favorite after surviving Nashville.
He has to be one of the top 3 contenders. Will I call him a favorite? Not exactly yet. I still think Will Power, he had a bit of a rough race. He's going to come back strong. We know last year he did not enjoy a day at all in the Music City Grand Prix. So overall, I think Will Power still has the upper hand. He has won at Portland before. Then Laguna Seca just needs to have a good solid run and a good solid run at Gateway. Scott Dixon got podium last year in Portland. So Portland could be a really important race. Let's see how he does in the Oval. But I wouldn't consider him exactly a favorite yet. But definitely, I think he's one of the top 3 to watch.
Well, Scott Dixon's won 6 of them before, so there's no reason to doubt that he could win a 7th this year. But I agree with you, Joe. I think Will Power still has to be the favorite at this point. But if you look at how tight the championship is right now, you've got 5 drivers separated, by 33 here, with all the way back to Palou. It is still a very close championship, and I don't think you can say, even though we're coming up to the end of a season here, that anybody's got one hand on the championship just yet. Everybody is still very much in mathematical contention and realistic contention to take this title with how close they are. All it takes is one bad race from somebody and one good race from another to completely change the complexion of things. So I think Power is still, if you had to pick a favorite, he is the favorite at the moment. Certainly don't count Scott Dixon out, but don't count a few of the guys just behind them in the points back either, because it is a very close championship fight, and it's probably going to come down to the final lap of the final race.
Yeah, the final lap, the final race. And it's really amazing with only 3 races to go. We have 5 drivers separated by 33 points. It just shows how amazingly close and competitive the NTT IndyCar Series championship is. And I agree with you guys. I think right now, Will Power is still one of the drivers to beat right now. But Scott Dixon, I really like where his season is headed right now, especially with all of the momentum he's been building since Toronto. Really turned on a light switch, and that number 9 team is just clicking, and when they're not winning, they're points racing, getting some really solid points finishes, and winning a very crazy race today in Nashville. I say watch out. I believe Scott Dixon certainly has the most momentum out of any of the drivers in the top five. And speaking of surviving Nashville, that's literally what you had to do today to see the checker flag, multiple cautions for incidents, a red flag in the final 5 laps, and many cars suffering damage. Last year's race in Nashville was very chaotic, and this year was much of the same. Many compare the mayhem in Nashville to NASCAR, to Talladega in NASCAR, or Baku in Formula One. Should IndyCar make more changes to this track layout if the race returns next year? Leave it the same, or consider moving it to the Nashville Super Speedway if they want to stay in the area, since IndyCar currently doesn't have many ovals on the schedule.
Well, there are only so many layout changes you can make when the defining feature of a track is that it goes over and back a bridge in the city. I think that's probably the main feature that everybody thinks of when they think of this track. And to take that away would be such a radical design change that I don't know if it would have the same draw certainly to the casual fans as this current layout does. Listen, if you're in the Nashville market, you want to try to advertise to the Nashville market, and maybe I can get somebody who's in that market, Brandon Crossland, to voice his opinion on tomorrow's Encore show. But for now, from my perspective, I would just say go back to Nashville Super Speedway. We've seen the return with NASCAR over the last couple of years. The fans seem to really enjoy it. And you're right, Kobe, there aren't too many ovals on the IndyCar schedule right now. I'm sure Jimmy Johnson would love to get a couple more ovals on the schedule here, and we'll see what his plans are for 2023 and beyond. But selfishly, as a fan, I think the schedule should be a little bit more balanced. I think right now it's a little bit too road and street course heavy. I'd like to see a couple more ovals. We got NASCAR coming up to Richmond in not too long as well, and I think that would be a good race to maybe consider bringing back. I know it was supposed to come back in 2020. Obviously, the pandemic changed those plans, but I think if you're in the Nashville market, you've got a super speedway right there. You might as well be using it. I think it might be the same mistake that NASCAR is potentially making with the Chicago street circuit race. Again, you have a track in Chicagoland that a lot of fans seem to really miss. Now it's been off the schedule for a couple of years. If you wanted to go into that market, go to the purpose-built racetrack rather than trying to design a street circuit that may or may not succeed. Now, I'm sure a lot of fans have enjoyed the attrition and the entertainment from the races that we've seen here the last couple of years of this Nashville street race. But I just think, certainly for the race teams, it's been quite a bit of a nightmare to try to even get to the finish of these races, and to have, I don't want to, bet my life that this number is right. I saw somebody scrolling through Twitter, I forget who it was, but they said that I think it was 36 of the 80 laps today were run under caution. And when that happens, frequently, I don't think you get a very good product for the fans to enjoy when you have close to half the race being run under yellow flag conditions. So I think something certainly needs to change if this is going to be a regular stop on the IndyCar schedule. And maybe that change is going back to the oval that they raced it for so many years and bringing that back to bring a little bit better balance to the IndyCar series schedule in terms of road courses and street circuits versus the ovals.
I have to agree with you, Ben. When it comes to the street course at Nashville, it looks good on paper. It's right there in the downtown area. People could walk from the hotel rooms, neighborhoods to the racetrack, enjoy all the festivities before and after the race. Compared to Nashville Super Speedway, a little bit of a drive, get out of town, but then you have all the space. It's an oval, all dedicated to the race, the event itself. However, last year's race, I believe we had, again, just like you mentioned, Ben, most of the race under caution flag. When you have a race that's just under caution flag most of the time, you could have a huge crowd there, but they don't want to see pace laps. They want to see racing. Yes, the crashes, that just adds part of the value of, okay, this is the race. It's a tricky track, but still, I don't think most fans are going to say, that was really fun, I want to go back again, unless they had a really good view, really great time of some of the activities outside the race. Because if you want to sit through caution lap after caution lap, that's not the kind of product IndyCar wants to put out there as well. They want to showcase these drivers as some of the best drivers in the world. But when they're just crashing out, the track, some of those areas are still looking very too narrow to even get too wide. Because we saw one incident, I believe it was when Ray Hall got into the wall. Then behind him, they start stacking up, and we had another caution. So overall, I have to agree. I think the Nashville market, both IndyCar and NASCAR, wants to get as much action in that growing market. IndyCar went with the street course because it's right in the heart of downtown, but I think NASCAR going to the super speedway, that's starting to look like that's paying off a lot more better. Be really interesting to see if we get another strong crowd for the third year at the Music City Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I really wanted to see this Nashville street race succeed. I mean, I really like the backdrop. The setting, racing in downtown Nashville, especially over the bridge. I think it's a beautiful place. To take pictures during race weekend and all of that. But like we've been saying, it's been really chaotic these last 2 years, and I'm sure the teams don't like having to spend extra money for a crash damage at a race like this, because this is really crazy how many drivers had damage today. It's kind of like IndyCar, IndyCar on a short track or whatever in a bull ring. That's basically what it was today. And Ben, I like the point you made about there needed to be more balance on the IndyCar schedule. Like you were saying, is really more road and street heavy right now, and not enough ovals. If IndyCar decides that the Nashville street circuit, is just too crazy and not going to work out long term, they can very well just take it to Lebanon, Tennessee, and to the Nashville Super Speedway, and IndyCar race there for a while, and I'm sure they'd be welcome back with open arms, and a lot of people would be happy to see another oval on the IndyCar schedule. And one driver who had an up and down weekend, really an up and down season, is Colton Herta. Last year he dominated Nashville until he ended up crashing out. Qualifying yesterday didn't go well for him. He hit the wall and started at the back. Then early in the race, he got pushed into a wall after making contact with Dalton Kellett, lost the lap, ended up getting it back from all of the cautions we saw, and he survived the mayhem to rally back to finish fifth after a frustrating Iowa doubleheader and the car breaking at the IMS road course. This was a much-needed result for the number 26 Gamebridge Honda. While Herta's not in the championship conversation, there's still a lot for him to play for with 3 races remaining. Do you see Herta winning at least one of the final 3 races?
Yes, Laguna Seca, he is the man to beat at that track. The problem is that's the last race of the year. Last year, he went out there really strong. A lot of people thought championship contention for 2022. Here we are, 2022, and it just seems to be a repeat of what we saw last year. The inconsistency, the mistake at Long Beach, battling for the lead and then crashing, mechanical issues, strategy not going their way. If I'm running the Autosport, even if Colton Herta gets a win at Laguna Seca, a track he's really good at, if he was to get to win at Portland, another track that he really likes, and let's see what happens in Gateway, even if he gets 2 out of 3 wins or 3 out of 3 wins, still, we got to look at making some sort of adjustment for next year. Because last year he ended really strong. A lot of people thought he'd be a championship contender this year. That's not the case. You can't afford doing the same thing, ending on a strong note, then coming out next year looking like a favorite, and then just fizzling out.
Joe, I got to be honest, I don't see it. I get what you're saying about Laguna Seca, and I certainly would not be surprised if Colton Herta goes out and wins, because he's a very talented driver and he has the speed from that race car. But the Andretti team, to me, just is not firing on all cylinders. They haven't been all year, and I haven't seen anything from them that makes me willing to go out there and predict a win from any of their drivers, to close this season out. Even the win that Alexander Rossi got, at the IMS road course last week. Apparently, we find out that there was an infraction with their car there in terms of the weight and using the water bottle to get to the minimum weight, and he was docked 20 points. A lot of people think they should have gone the NASCAR route and taken the win away from him. So even when Andretti has won this year, there's still been controversy, and did they really have a car good enough to get up to the front and fight for the win? So Colton Herta has shown moments of brilliance this year. He always has. He's a very talented young driver. A lot of people are saying he might be the next American F1 driver, and it's great that he's gotten those opportunities. I'm not knocking his talent at all. I'm just saying these last 3 races this year, where we've seen him, where we've seen Andretti, I just don't see him being able to pull off one of those wins to close out this season.
Yeah, there's certainly still a lot of things going on at Andretti Autosport, and if you did have to pick one race where you could possibly win, as Joe said, obviously Laguna Seca, and there's obviously a lot on Colton Herta's mind right now. Trying to focus on doing your day job right now, and then all the conversations going on with him in Formula One. And one of the things I think Colton Herta really needs to clean up, is the inconsistency. I'm not talking about what happened at the IMS road course, the previous race weekend where something out of your control goes wrong. I'm talking about some of the mistakes that he made on track, kind of like in qualifying. If Colton Herta wants to be one of the next American Formula One drivers, that's something he'll certainly have to clean up, because in the world of Formula One, when you make mistakes like that, they're gonna chew you up and spit you out.
Be really interesting to see what Colton Herta could do for the remainder of the season as we follow the rest of the NTT IndyCar Series throughout the year. Meanwhile, NASCAR Cup Series at Michigan International Raceway, and we saw quite a battle for the lead and for the win. And throughout the entire race, a lot of folks has had opinions of Michigan being one of the more boring tracks, but today I think it really lived up to what a lot of people anticipate with this brand new car. But Kevin Harvick, he now has a win, and he is in the playoffs. However, we have 15 different drivers that have won a race. We got Richmond, we got Watkins Glen, and we have Daytona. Adam, should any of the drivers with one win already be concerned about being out by having the lowest number of points if we have more than 16 winners?
Yeah, and some of the drivers that have one win, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and now Kevin Harvick. To me, you will see drivers with one win in the playoffs, but you take a look at the next couple weeks before Daytona. Richmond, Martin Truex Jr. has been good there in the past. Watkins Glen, Chase Elliott's won there in the past. Ross Chastain won at Coda. Daniel Suarez at Sonoma. Those three are going to be contenders. And then, and we know about Daytona. So if I'm a driver that's at least 13th through 15th, I would be worried.
I wouldn't be too worried, especially if you're Kevin Harvick. I think you're far enough up in points to not have to worry about that. And I guess I've got to ride this wave. I've placed my bets. I don't think we get to 16 winners, but now I have to admit it's a lot more likely than it looked like it would be at the start of this season, at the start of any season, for that matter. The parity of the next-gen car and the parity that we've seen this year has simply been phenomenal, and that's all been great. But again, people know that it's no secret where I fall on the issue of playoffs and what the best championship format is here. And I've got to be honest. I tried to do some quick research before we came onto the show tonight, because this situation is so unprecedented. Everybody talks about you're winning, you're in. Well, what happens if you get 17 winners? Is it the guy who's the lowest in points among the winners? So would it be Denny Hamlin? But wait a second, Denny Hamlin has 2 wins. So who does that go up to? Does it go up to Kevin Harvick, who has the fewest playoff points? I believe he has the fewest playoff points, if I remember seeing NBC's playoff graphic correct. But is it the driver with the fewest playoff points that's the first out because they reset it and then it's the last guy out? Or is it the lowest driver in points with 1 win? I feel like we haven't gotten a clear answer on that. Nobody's really been talking about that. Or does NASCAR just say, this is so unprecedented, what the heck? These guys probably aren't going to be competing for the championship in the Final Four anyway. Why don't we just let all 17 in to celebrate this fantastic season that we've had, just like we changed the rules in 2013 with the unprecedented Spingate situation to let Jeff Gordon into the chase. It's just an overly complicated system that is virtually impossible to explain to the casual race fan that NASCAR tries to market the excitement of these Game 7 moments to. And I want to just drive the point home here of how broken this system is right now. Denny Hamlin is 19th in points. He has 2 wins. He has absolutely nothing to worry about. He is in the playoffs. There is absolutely no way he gets knocked out. Ryan Blaney is 2nd in points right now. Chase Elliott's running away with the regular season championship. So this idea that Blaney could be the regular season champ without a win and get into the playoffs that way, that's gone. Chase Elliott has a virtually insurmountable lead at this point. Ryan Blaney's not going to win the regular season championship. But Ryan Blaney, despite being 2nd in points now, is the last guy in. Martin Truex Jr. is 4th in points, and he's the first driver out. So how broken is your system that all it's going to take is Michael McDowell winning Watkins Glen? He was 3rd at Sonoma. We know how he can drive on road courses. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he could work some strategy and win Watkins Glen. We know about Daytona, like you were saying, Adam. Brad Keselowski is a very good super speedway racer. Bubba Wallace is a very good super speedway racer. Heck, the speed Bubba Wallace showed today, who's to say he doesn't go out and win Richmond next week? And then we get to 16 right there. So Ryan Blaney, second in points, is not safe in the championship playoffs right now. But Denny Hamlin, who's 19th, is, because he has 2 wins. And while Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., they have had great seasons by all accounts, the only thing that they're missing is something in the win column right now. The fact that there is a legitimate question as to whether or not they're going to be eligible to race for a championship when you have guys 14th and 19th in points that could be in the playoffs and in some cases will be in the playoffs, it's just asinine. I don't understand how people can look at this. I get why people like it. I get why people enjoy the entertainment and the questions as to whether or not what's going to happen. But to me, this is just an objectively bad system to crown a champion when we have to be having these discussions on air 3 weeks before the playoffs begin as to whether or not guys who have even won a race this year, with all this marketing about how you win and you're in, they might not be in the playoffs either. It's been a fantastic season. We've gotten so many different winners, so much parity, and that should be something that we're celebrating. Yet we're sitting here talking about the championship format again and how broken it is. It's just ridiculous.
And I have to agree with you, Ben. For the longest time, we said win and you're in. And like you said, if Bubba Wallace gets a win next week, then it's win and you're maybe in. We've always said it's win and you're in. Goes to wins and then relies on points. And then you have somebody like Blaney. Great season overall when it comes to the points. But just because he has no wins, he's out of it. And then you have someone like Hamlin. If it wasn't for those 2 wins, boy, he would be having a rough season. But 2 wins, and he's in the playoffs, and he's locked in since he has multiple wins. Just really something else. And of course, we're going to talk about Ryan Blaney, 19 points above the cut line. Martin Truex Jr. is right behind him. He is looking forward to Richmond. Bubba Wallace, second place finish today, and he is in a must-win situation. We all know that slow start that they had, the bad luck with the pit crews early on. After the race, but I would say it was another positive step for the team. But he definitely was hard on himself. Felt like he let the team down, came up short. But really, I got to ask you, Ben, is his disappointment valid since we only have the 3 races left and he knows he's in the must-win situation, or else he's out of a championship contention and just go out there for wins like last year?
Yeah, well, speaking of Bubba Wallace, I'll bring up his co-owner, Denny Hamlin, again here. I've just pulled the standings up. It looks like Hamlin's up to 17th after this weekend, but I think it was 19th coming in. Regardless, way behind even the top 16, if you want to do a cutoff of the top 16 drivers being in the postseason. But, I'll get to the question that you just asked here, Joe, because I know I've harped on long enough about that. In terms of Bubba Wallace, look, I love that the guy wears his emotions on his sleeve. I think that's something to be celebrated. He clearly wants this very, very badly. And his day is going to come. He's on a string of 4 consecutive top 10s right now. This is the best stretch of his career. He's capped it off right now with a pole that he's converted to a second-place finish. And maybe I shouldn't even say capped it off because, again, who's to say he doesn't continue the streak next weekend with the speed he's showing right now. So it's something to celebrate for 2311 Racing. I know he wants to win, but if he keeps running like this, it's going to be inevitable. The win is going to come at some point. Maybe not in the next 3 races, maybe not to get him into the playoffs this season, but 2311 has certainly turned a corner. And Bubba Wallace has nothing to hang his head about. He had a fantastic race weekend this weekend. He's had several strong runs recently. That team is definitely starting to pick things back up. And it's not just a pit crew either. The cars, I think, have more speed. Heck, you had Ty Gibbs today. I mean, a great run for him. And what is this, only his 3rd Cup Series start, filling in for Kurt Busch and getting a top 10 today. So a lot of speed out of that 45 car as well. Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan's team definitely turning a corner. Bubba Wallace should be excited. I get being disappointed in the moment. I get that he wants to win. But he shouldn't be too hard on himself. He had a great run today, and that win is going to come if he keeps running like this.
Yeah, I think that win is certainly going to come for Bubba Wallace, and like you were saying, understand that he really wants to win and prove that he's deserving of this seat. Because we all hear the chatter, that a lot of people don't think Bubba's lived up to the expectations of this car, but 2311 Racing. I'm wondering, is this the same team we saw, just like even a month ago? Because we're talking about how things were going completely wrong for this team, especially on pit road. But even the few minor changes they made, 2311 really making us all look silly here, because all of us said that no way that making just a few changes would do anything to solve their problems on pit road. But believe it or not, it really seems like they're doing much better on pit road, especially this number 23 team. I think this should be a day for Bubba Wallace to celebrate. A lot of people put him in the conversation to win Daytona, Talladega, maybe Atlanta, and that's it. But based on the run that Bubba Wallace has been on in the last several weeks, it really seems like if 2311 can continue this momentum and Bubba keep putting together good runs, Bubba Wallace might be a contender to win on just about every type of track. And since this is the most successful stretch of his Cup Series career so far, he should open up a cold one and celebrate tonight, because this is something he should be proud of. It shows that he's improving his racecraft. He's listening to Denny Hamlin, learning a lot, becoming a better driver, and who knows how good Bubba Wallace will be in the future. And I mean, he's still a relatively young driver, so there's still a lot of room for him to improve and become a much better driver at NASCAR's highest level.
Improving better and better each week. That team is looking stronger and stronger each week. Honestly, as we mentioned, he could go out there and maybe contend for a win at Richmond. Toyotas are always good there. Wouldn't be a shock. But you look at how they were at Richmond earlier this year, they were horrible. Denny was even shocked he found out Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace were so far behind last time in Richmond. It'd be really interesting to see if that could change up. This race in Michigan, it was definitely a change up from what we saw with past generation of cars, especially the last generation car, where it was a lot of times strung out, cars full throttle throughout the corners. Here, very different. A lot of passing, a lot of battles, hard racing all over, many positive reviews. Adam, where does this Michigan race rank compared to some of the past Michigan races?
To me, this Michigan race was in the top 10. And Joe, you mentioned there were battles all over the field. And yesterday we talked about Toyota wasn't going to have a good race at Michigan. Well, we were so wrong about that, because Bubba Wallace almost won second place finish. And Denny Hamlin, he had a pit road penalty with one of his crew members going over too early, so he had to come from back in the pack, to score this finish today. So I think it was to me, it was among the last few Michigan races, it was in the top 10. It was nice to see all the manufacturers up front all day long, battling for different positions during the race today.
Almost all the manufacturers getting opportunities to lead the race today, from Bubba Wallace early on. Then we saw both of the Trackhouse Racing drivers lead the race, and then at the end, Kevin Harvick, Stewart-Haas Racing, getting that win. That has to be a huge relief for Rodney Childers, Kevin Harvick, to get that win and end that winless streak. Now, one incident that occurred very early on and have many pointing fingers is the crash on lap 24 during a restart. Rick Ware Racing, this was after a competition caution on lap 20 due to the track being wet and a green racetrack because of the rain. JJ Yaley, prior to the competition, he was in the back of the pack, at number 15, usually towards the back. When most teams pitted, he and a few others stayed out. He had gone on the radio saying his car was really tight, and then on the restart with his tight race car, he moved up in front of Michael McDowell, some contact, more contact, and next thing you know, 9 cars all involved in a crash with Austin Cindric head on into the outside wall. Thankfully, safer barrier and the safety improvements car, he got out of the car, but he was okay. Kyle Busch was involved in the crash too. He was done for the day. Very early on, many were critical of JJ Yeley and Rick Ware Racing for doing this move so early in the race compared to if it was a green-white checker flag situation. But this is racing. We all know everyone has their different motives. So, Ben, starting with you, was this more of a reckless move or unfair to point the finger at JJ Yeley for causing this crash?
Well, listen, people know that I write for Brock Beard and LastCar.info, and we certainly have an affinity for the smaller teams of our sport. And Rick Ware, for many, many years, has fallen under that category and continues to fall under that category. I know that team is trying bigger and better things and seems to get a little bit better every year, but is still very much a backmarker by Cup Series standards. And let me say that they have every right to go on whatever strategy they think is best for the race that they're running. And their race is not the race of the Joe Gibbses and Rick Hendricks and Stuart Haas and Penske's of the world. So they have every right to do what they want to do that they think can give them the best position to finish in a NASCAR Cup Series race. I have no problem with that. But when you do it that early in the race and when the end result is taking out a half a dozen cars like this and the incredibly hard hit we saw with Austin Cindric there as well, I think people are going to be understandably a little bit upset, or at the very least confused as to why you might make that decision that early in the race, knowing that your car probably doesn't have the speed to hang with others around you. And so ultimately, to me, if I were in JJ Yeley or Rick Ware's position, that's maybe a strategy you try on an overtime restart with 2 laps to go and see how many positions you can hold, not that early in the race. And it's unfortunate that it took out so many cars, Kyle Busch included. I mean, Kyle Busch desperately needs a good run to get his season back on track. Looked like he could have one today with the speed the Toyotas had, and his car was done for the day as well. So it took out a lot of really good race cars that were just innocent victims in that whole circumstance. And unfortunately, I think people have every right to point the finger at the 15 and the Rick Ware Racing team because, it was a move that I think was just a little bit too unwise given their situation and given the limitations of that team and that equipment.
Yeah, probably not the smartest move for JJ Yeley to stay out there and cause that big stack up, which led to that really horrendous crash for Austin Cindric. Really good to see Austin get out of that, but I would rather JJ Yeley pull that move now rather than wait to let's say you get down to the championship race in Phoenix, a NASCAR overtime finish to crown a champion. You're on the elite lap, everybody pits, and you stay out. And we saw how it cost Eric Jones the Xfinity Championship quite a handful of years ago when Cole Witt stayed out at Homestead and stacked Jones up, and that's how Daniel Suarez was able to get his championship win. Eric Jones wasn't able to fight him, so it's certainly a situation you want to avoid, and it's unfortunate that JJ Yeley stand out caused this multi-car incident, and JJ was honestly, just really just doing the best he can with the type of equipment that he's in.
Yeah, the equipment he's in with Rick Ware Racing, we know very rarely don't make it to the front. I sort of have to agree with you, I guess, that early on, especially with the competition caution, to stay out and then just be in the way, very unfortunate. Just one of those deals, but definitely just something where they are racing their own race plan, trying to get positions, of course, sponsorship money, airtime, but this really did not work out at all for the 15 team. Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, talking about an incident that didn't work out for either one of them. Lap 159, they got together. Bell, his race was ruined hard into the outside wall along the front stretch, just destroyed the right front of that car. For Ross Chastain, he was running fast all day long. With this incident, he got some damage on the left front, a nice sized dent there, and then he was sort of out of contention, out of the picture for the win. And many were split on who was at fault, Christopher Bell or Ross Chastain. Bell, he had not stopped for 4 tires yet. Ross Chastain had 4 fresh tires, and unfortunately, with this caution, it made it where the cycle was all messed up, so he and Suarez could not get towards the front. Kobe, was this another incident of Ross Chastain being too aggressive? And people say too early, but we know it's the end of the race, but was he just too aggressive for this moment?
I know every time there's an incident on track involving Ross Chastain, people are automatically going to point the fingers at him because it seems like every week he has a growing list of enemies on the racetrack. But after reviewing this particular incident several times on the replay, it really looks like Christopher Bell drifted up the track into Ross Chastain. So I would say, not clear. I'd say Bell really wrecked himself there. And I guess you can argue that for Ross Chastain, as soon as he saw Bell going up, he could have, just slightly lifted to let him in line. I guess that's a fair assessment there. But you're coming towards the end of the race. You're pushing. Ross Chastain, those Trackhouse cars look really strong today. Unfortunately, they didn't get they weren't able to get the result that they wanted. But I really see this incident more so on Christopher Bell drifting up the track into Chastain, into Ross Chastain, rather than him just being too overly aggressive.
Yeah, Kobe, I agree with you. Christopher, this incident involving Christopher Bell and Ross Chastain, they were up there battling for, they were up there in the top 5, and one of those two drivers could have easily won this race. They were strong all day long. So, to me, Ross Chastain, I think he was being aggressive, and Christopher Bell could have moved up a little bit and given Ross Chastain some more room.
When it comes to the two of them, both of them towards the front almost all day. This crash, Christopher Bell's day was ruined. Ross Chastain's day was ruined. And so was Dan Suarez. Yes, Dan Suarez came out behind Chastain on the pits, but had they cycled through, those two would have been 1-2. Bell would have to make another pit stop, his final one. It's really unfortunate, but that's just part of racing, as we know. And of course, the NASCAR Cup Series, their next race will be in Richmond. The other race that was going on this weekend, World Rally Championship.
Yes, and providing the final update on the World Rally Championship event in Finland. The Kalle Rovanperä winning streak came to an end today. Ottonic took the win after leading from Friday until the end, consistently ahead of Rovanperä. He won this event for the third time in a row, and is still the only full-time driver besides Rovanperä to win a race this year. Tonic is second in points, 94 behind Rovanperä with 5 races remaining. Only the top 7 are still mathematically eligible for the championship. Rally Belgium is coming up on August 19th through 21st. Rovanperä was second in the race, and he's second in the grid ranking, but lost some ground to the leader, Shane Van Gisbergen.
Thank you, Kobe. Now we'll move on to MotoGP. The season resumes after its summer break with the British Grand Prix. Pecco Bagnaia led the Ducati riders, who finished first, third, fourth, and fifth. Fabio Quartararo's race started well, but after the long lap penalty, he fell to 8th. Alexis Espargaro finished in 9th, right behind him, 22 points behind Quartararo in the championship standings. Bagnaia is 49 points behind Quartararo, but only 27 behind Espargaro. So, Joe, is Bagnaia racing for second place only, or is the championship still the goal, assuming Quartararo might have some bad luck?
You said it right there. Quartararo needs to have bad luck for Pecco Bagnaia to have a shot at the championship. Very similar to the FIA point system, 25 points for the win, but the point spread is much more smaller, going all the way down to 15th position. So Pecco could continue to win race after race after race. But Fabio Quartararo is in that top 5. He's going to get the championship. Really, it's coming down to he needs Fabio Quartararo to have bad luck. And let's be honest, 2 years ago, Fabio Quartararo, he started having a second half of the season, a big slump. Last year, he didn't have that. And in fact, it was Pecco Bagnaia who ended the championship early by crashing out. He can't do that anymore. He has to be picture perfect. So overall, I feel this is becoming more of a battle for second place. But he is very dependent on Quartararo having bad luck and a slump where he could gain ground. Without that slump, without that bad luck, it is a race for second place for Pecco.
Well, yesterday, Julia reported that Ducati would be looking at Enea Bastianini and Jorge Martin during the next 2 rounds to determine who would join Bagnaia in the factory team. Both of them started next to each other. They both gained 4 positions in the race, finishing 4th and 5th today. So, Joe, between those two, which rider impressed you the most? And does anyone have the upper hand in Austria for the next race weekend?
Today, the rider that impressed me the most was Bastianini. Again, just a great, smart race. coming up towards the front, and he shows time and time again he is so good at taking care of those tires and putting together a late charge. That's what he did. I feel that is his greatest strength, taking care of the rear tires especially, and then at the end of the race, he is there contending for the win. Jorge Martin, he has the raw speed. That is his big advantage, but the consistency is where he's really lacking this year. We go to Austria. Traditionally, I would say this would be upper hand for Jorge Martin. The raw speed, the A1 ring, Red Bull ring, very fast. But now we got a brand new chicane along that long straightaway after the first corner to make it a little bit safer for MotoGP after Zarco's really scary crash with Franco Morbidelli that almost took out Maverick Vinales and Valentino Rossi. Excuse me about that. So with that change with the chicane, I think you're going to see tire wear become a little bit more of an issue handling the bike because that's going to be a slower corner. It might give Bastianini a little bit more of an advantage, but still, I think Jorge Martin a little bit of a hands-up advantage over Bastianini.
Well, the season's coming down to 8 races in the 2022 season. Eventually, drivers will be mathematically eliminated from a championship hunt, as we know. Now, Juan Mir Suzuki crashed out. He's 12th in points. Rins is 8th in points. Rins has arrived in 2023. Mir's future has not yet been announced. So, Joe, is this a sign of Suzuki's inner trouble as the team has 8 races remaining?
It is a sign of the inner troubles. Both riders, this was their opportunity. They both got into Q2. They were both starting towards the front. But Rins, this was the first time where he really looked like he was in winning contention, but then he just started falling towards the back. Nothing left for Bastianini or those Ducatis. And then Mir, he crashed out. He has no podiums this year in MotoGP. This is not going well at all for him. Rins, he has a ride, as you mentioned, in 2023 lineup, but not Mir. I think this is just something where it's really going to be eating up on Mir. And he's a very young champion. Remember, he got it in his second season with only 1 win. Here we are, no podiums, no sign of what's going to be his future for Mir. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next few races. But I think Suzuki, that team is probably a mess behind the scenes, knowing that their season's coming to an end. They don't have wins. And the future of Mir, their last world champion MotoGP, is unknown.
Well, thank you for that MotoGP update, Joe. I know it's early in the morning for Julia and Joshua. It's a shame they couldn't join us, but thank you for giving us that update there. And now we'll go back over to Kobe for an update on IMSA.
Oh, yeah, Ben, and it was a crazy day of racing for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in Elkhart Lake at Road America. All 5 classes racing mixed track conditions for most of the day, dry and wet. The battle at the front of the field was intense during the final stint and a fight between the Myers Shank Racing and Wayne Taylor Racing Acura's Felipe Albuquerque used GTD traffic as a pit to get by Oliver Jarvis for the overall lead and never looked back while Jarvis ran into trouble. GT cars allowed Jarvis to close the gap to Albuquerque again, but the number 60 Acura DPI was caught up in a battle with Earl Bamber in the number 02 Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac DPI. Jarvis went off into the grass in the King, came back across the track and smacked the concrete wall hard with the nose, but he still managed to limp across the finish line in 4th place. The race ended under caution with the number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Konica Minolta sponsor Acura DPI winning a big swing in the championship in favor of Albuquerque and co-driver Ricky Taylor that won at Road America, and Myers Shank Racing's misfortune at the end gives Albuquerque and Taylor the points lead with only Petit Le Mans remaining for DPI. Adam, with Wayne Taylor Racing leading Myers Shank Racing by 19 points entering Petit Le Mans, a winner-take-all situation just like last year. Did MSR drop the ball today?
Absolutely, Kobe. They could have won this race, but like you mentioned, the number 60 car crashed out and came home with a 4th place finish. To me, in order for the number 60 car to win the DPI class at Petit Le Mans, this is what needs to happen. They're going to have a strong weekend all around. Strong practice, strong qualifying, strong pit stops, including driver changes, and at least finish on the podium and have Wayne Taylor Racing to have some sort of bad luck. Otherwise, right now, Wayne Taylor Racing, that number 10 car with Felipe Albuquerque and Ricky Taylor, to me, they have one hand on the DPI championship trophy.
I actually disagree with that, Adam. I don't think they have one hand on the championship at all. I think it's like I said. I feel like it's a winner take all situation. So like last year with the number 31, Wheeling Engineering, Cadillac DPI from Action Express going against the 10. Just swap out the 31 for the 60, and it's basically the same scenario last year where the DPI car that finishes ahead of the other one is essentially going to be this year's DPI and actually the final DPI champion. And looking at some of the stats in the last several IMSA races, Meyer Shank Racing and Road America, they finished second place 5 races and a row. But Wayne Taylor Racing, the only difference between that, when you look at Meyer Shank Racing, it was great. They won the Rolex 24 and all of that. That's a crown jewel event, and that's really something to be excited about. But since the Rolex 24, Meyer Shank Racing hasn't been able to win. They have all those second place finishes, which is great, because consistency can really help elevate you to a championship. But what can really elevate you to a championship is winning races, and that's what Wayne Taylor Racing has been able to do. They won at Laguna Seca. They won Mid Ohio. They won the Sailing 6 Hours of the Glen, and now they've won at Road America. So it really seems like all of the momentum could be swinging in the favor of the number 10, but it's not over for Meyer Shank Racing yet. All they have to do is basically head into Petit Le Mans with a must-win attitude, and I'm not sure the 10 is going to do the same. The 10 has experience doing this. They did the same thing last year, came up short, but I'm sure Felipe Albuquerque, Ricky Taylor certainly learned from last year's championship battle. And they're going to go into Petit Le Mans and try to come out on the other side of the equation this time. But I'm sure Oliver Jarvis is certainly really kicking himself tonight because it's super unfortunate. It seems like Marashenko was probably gonna stop being the bridesmaid and finally get over the hump and get back to victory lane, but it just wasn't meant to be. And Jarvis also probably wishes he wasn't racing so hard with Earl Bamber to go off course and end up crashing the car. And it was remarkable that he didn't lose even more points, that he was able to limp the car around under caution rather than being forced to stop and be even further behind in the championship. So a really crucial mistake by Jarvis. And when we get to Petit Le Mans, I'm sure he's going to try to bounce back from that incident so Meyer Shank can try to win the title. And looking at some of the other class winners from today in LMP2, the number 18 Aero Motorsport car ended up winning with co-drivers Ryan Dial and Dwight Merriman. LMP3, another win for the number 74 Riley Motorsports Ligier, Gar Robinson and Felipe Fraga in GTD Pro. The number 14 Vassar Sullivan Racing Lexus of Jack Hawksworth and Ben Barnicoat in GTD Redemption after losing power on the final corner, the final lap at Lime Rock Park. The number 57 Winward Racing Mercedes, Russell Ward, Philip Ellis. They ended up getting redemption. The next IMSA race is August 28th at Virginia International Raceway for the Michelin GT Challenge, only GTD Pro and GTD classes in action. Then October 1st, the 10-hour endurance race to close the season and crown champions in all 5 classes, the Motul Petit Le Mans at Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta.
And taking a look at the grid ranking week 19, Shane Van Gisbergen continues to lead. Collie Rovanpera and Will Power both lost ground to Shane Van Gisbergen. Scott Dixon and Pecco Bagnaia, they both gained ground with their wins. And we have 2 MotoGP riders in the top 10. And for the second straight week, no NASCAR driver in the top 10. And first time this year, no American racer in the top 10 of the grid ranking. Overall, Ben, are you surprised by Chase Elliott's quiet performance at Michigan? Was really not a contender at all after his hot streak earlier. And Ross Chastain, the way he was running so much earlier in the season, now he dropped out of the top 10 with his late race crash. Are you surprised by both of them?
Well, Trackhouse maybe have cooled off a little bit. Of course, they got off to a fantastic start that I don't think anybody except maybe Justin Marks expected them to do. So, credit where credit's due there, but I think maybe they've cooled off just a little bit here. But Ross Chastain has still been in contention, week in and week out to have some strong runs, and I think he's going to continue to do that as the playoffs move on here. And Chase Elliott, again, it was a nice, solid day for him, not really in contention for the win. I think he finished 11th, so just outside the top 10 there. Again, it's very hard to maintain a stretch of consecutive top 2 finishes like Elliott was on earlier just a few races ago. But, I think a lot of cases, guys like Elliott and Chastain, we know for sure that they are in the playoffs. They're locked in. They'll be championship contenders. So it could just be a case of them maybe trying different setups or using these last few weekends before the playoffs as test sessions, glorified test sessions to experiment with and gain more data, maybe not to go out and get the results, but to better themselves in the long term as we get down into the playoff season and everything like that. So I think, their performances, maybe drop them in our grid ranking here by doing that, but it probably isn't something to hit the panic button over if you're an Elliott or a Chastain fan. They're probably just trying different things to get ready for the playoffs.
And especially with Michigan only stopped, they're not coming back here into playoffs. What a great opportunity to test out something new, especially since it's similar right now to Auto Club, in case Auto Club remains a 2-mile oval. Also in the top 10, Jamie Chadwick, she moved up to 4th place as some of the other drivers' scores dropped down. And then taking a look at the grid ranking, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, and Kyle Busch, they are all outside the top 25. Consistency has just not been there. Kyle Busch, 31st, crashed out early in that lap 24 crash during the restart involving J.J. Yaley, Austin Stringer, and so many. Just not having a great season. Only one win at the Bristol Dirt Race. Toby, if Kyle Busch was to go winless for the rest of the season, regular season, do you see him contending in the playoffs for wins?
I mean, potentially, but looking at Kyle Busch's results lately, he certainly hasn't been performing up to the level we really expect for Kyle Busch. Outside of that disqualification at Pocono, and then the wreck today, just things not really going well for the number 18 team, and it's really surprising that he only has one win, and it was the Bristol Dirt Race, and now that you think about it, if thinking back to that Bristol Dirt Race, if Chase Briscoe and Tyler Reddick don't take each other out there, then we'd be talking about Kyle Busch being winless this year, which is really insane to say. And then I really feel like in certain ways Kyle Busch is distracted right now by all of the things going on with this contract situation. And when you have your future hanging over your head like that, am I going to be with the team I probably expected to retire with when I initially signed the contract with JGR, or am I going to have to think about moving on to another team? I know Stewart Haas Racing is at the top of that list right now on the alternatives, but overall, I think we could potentially see Kyle Busch go back to victory lane later this season. I don't know if it's going to be in these final regular season races, but I think we could see at least one more Kyle Busch win before 2022 ends. And at the moment, I don't really see him contending for this year's NASCAR Cup Series championship. I feel like right now he really wants to get the future all figured out.
Get the future all figured out. It seems to be a distraction. He is just not having the season, and it's quite ironic considering how he said Bowman backed into a win. As you mentioned, the dirt race, he sort of backed into it because had those two not cause contact and crash out, he would have been there. And, of course, Tyler Reddick still finished 2nd place, just a little bit short. Kyle Busch way in the bottom of the grid ranking. And, of course, you can follow the entire grid ranking on gridranking.com and on our Twitter, Grid Ranking. Week 19, still got a lot of more racing ahead, including Formula E next weekend, their championship race.
That's right, Joe. And we had a lot of motorsports action from across the globe this weekend. So it's now time for everybody's grid one shining moment. So I'll start with you, Kobe. After all the action we saw this weekend, what's your grid one shining moment?
I have to say, Adam, my grid one shining moment this race weekend has to go to Alex Palou. He's still surprising me, considering the fact that he's been sued by his current employer, Chip Ganassi Racing, and everything going on with his contract drama between Ganassi and McLaren. He still managed to finish on the podium today, and he was out front for a while in Nashville, leading laps. And at one point, if it wasn't for all the cautions, he was in the catbird seat to possibly go out there and win the race. Alex Palou continues to impress me. I thought with all of this hanging over his head, that Palou would be struggling, the things not going right for him and his tenure with Chip Ganassi Racing. We're just saying, in a string of disappointing finishes, but with only a few races to go in the IndyCar season, he's still in the hunt for the championship. All it takes is for him to, go out there, have a strong finish of the season, and somebody else is running in trouble, and he could very well go back to back as an IndyCar champion. I'm just super impressed by Palou and how he's handling this situation so maturely.
Well, it's tough to look past Bubba Wallace and the great runs that he's been having these last few weeks here, and to cap it off again with a second place run today from pole position was very, very good. But there was one driver that was better than him at the end of the day today, and that is Kevin Harvick. And I will give my official one shining moment to him. It's been a long time coming for Harvick, and people were starting to wonder if he had maybe already won his last race. He's 46 years old now, certainly in the twilight of his career, but he still has the speed to get the job done as he showed today. And, the way the parity has been this year, who knows? Maybe Harvick gets hot at the right time and could redeem himself for the 2020 season that he had that kind of came apart towards the end of the playoffs. But a great run for him, just what that 4 team needed, and also obviously just what the 2311 team, the 23 car needed as well. So your top two, definitely some one shining moments all around there, but especially Kevin Harvick to break one of the longest winless streaks of his career certainly deserves a one shining moment from me.
My one shining moment is going to go to Ty Gibbs in the Cup Series, a top 10 finish. He has just been impressive week after week. The tracks he has to race at, looking at this weekend, Michigan, a 2-mile oval. Then he was at Indianapolis road course, and then prior to that, Pocono. 3 very different racetracks. He has gone in there, driving the car to solid finishes, and overall, very, very strong performance considering how short notice he had at Pocono, survived the mayhem in Indianapolis, and then today even led a lap. What a performance by the number 45, Ty Gibbs. That's my one shining moment.
For me, I've got to give it to Scott Dixon. Right after his win today at the Music City Grand Prix, he passed the legend, Martin Jurdy. Now he sits, and now the only person who's above Scott Dixon for most IndyCar wins, the great AJ Foyt. What Scott Dixon did today on the streets of Nashville was incredible. Don't count him out for the championship. He's just lurking in the weeds. Don't be so. And also, like Kobe mentioned, I'll say Kevin Harvick as well. After coming off a winless streak, winning today, that was just incredible for him, his team, and everyone at Stewart-Haas Racing.
Yeah, and also incredible for his family as well. And you remember the previous time he won at Michigan, he got to ride in the car with his son Keelan, and then just several years later, he's able to do the same thing with his daughter Piper today, and that's a memory that his kids will never ever forget. So that was a special family moment for the Harvick family there. And unfortunately, we're out of time for tonight, so I want to remind all of our viewers to please like and subscribe to GRIDnet. We're here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon page to invest in GRIDnet to keep us on the air long term. Click the link in the video description below to buy me a coffee, and you can buy a drink for your favorite honored talent here at Grid Network. Also, big thank you to Edward Hunter from Formula Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us a copy. We truly appreciate it. Any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link below and referral code GRIDnet gives you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And be sure to check out Grid Live Encore tomorrow night with Ben and Brandon Crossland recapping the Xfinity and ARCA races at Michigan, plus the Indy Lights race that happened earlier today in Nashville. Then Wednesday, Adam and I on another edition of Grid Tonight to analyze the latest news in motorsports. For Joe Samniego, Adam Limerick, and Ben Snyder, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching tonight, and have a wonderful week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.